Alrighty, so welcome to the Digital ESL curriculum training. I am your host, Talley Caruso. I am based in the San Francisco Bay Area in Castro Valley. I've been partnering with the Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy, as you've heard, for several months now, and they've been incredible partners, as you'll see momentarily. So just to hop right in, for those of you that have not seen the official definition for digital literacy, it is the ability to use technology to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information. However, a lot of times I think people, they go into the evaluate, create, and communicate part without even the finding part or without even getting onto the internet and things that are quite basic. So today we're going to go through Digital ESL, which is an open educational resource that I created. It's free and ready to use material that I would love for each and every one of you to feel comfortable taking and customizing if you wish, or using as is. So you'll see the little sticky note on the side. If you haven't already, please type your name, location, and role in the chat window. All right, and before starting, a huge thank you. So some images on the bottom right are from the digital symposium that Jackie had mentioned, and then a slew of names that you see here, all of which have helped us get to where we are right now in terms of editing, providing feedback, and such. So thank you all very much for your contributions and making this an incredible experience and really building community from it. We really need this. And then, of course, thank you all that are here attending today's training. This is something that I think as more people are aware of the resource and how you might be able to use it, we can help more people. All right, so a little bit of background about me. The most important part I'd probably say is the fact that I'm a huge advocate for practical solutions regarding digital inclusion, and I'm the author here of Digital ESL. You'll see a little picture of my parents from earlier this year up top. They're located in New Jersey, so a lot of the things that we're talking about from a digital literacy standpoint, particularly for older adults, really hits home for me. All right, so today's agenda, and I have my watch here. Welcome to warm up. We have 10 minutes. Then I'll give you a little bit of background on digital ESL and some excerpts. But we're really going to spend the bulk of the time personalizing your own copy. And during that time, I know we've listed a lot of details here, but what it basically is a walkthrough hands-on so that you actually have a copy that you can use as soon as you leave. And during that time, I welcome questions. However, we also have an additional 5 minutes at the end if there's any questions that come out of going through the entire activity. All right, so let's start with a warm-up. And everybody can see my screen, all right? Okay, wonderful. All right, so you can either shout it out or chat it. But I want to, this is a pretty straightforward question, but what are these? And you don't have to get super specific, but keyboards, yep, phone keyboards specifically. Yeah, perfect. So these are phone keyboards, and as you can see, there's different layouts. I think the one that we're all here most used to is this QWERTY one in American English. But then there's also QWERTY, I believe it's in Vietnamese. We've got Azerty for French. We've got Arabic, which has the right to left. We've got, two types of Chinese language keyboards. And it is quite incredible how many different keyboards exist. And this is just, a little snapshot. So what do you notice about them? I think I mentioned a couple of things here. So you might see up here, there's some additional, I believe they're diacritics at the top of the regular QWERTY keyboard for Vietnamese. As I mentioned before, here's Azerty.
How many keyboards are there?
There's at least dozens.
I don't think I'm able to count them.
Yeah, it's kind of intense, and there's some stuff like even the handwriting keyboard. I was like, oh wow, that's really useful. This is my scrawl because I don't really know how to write in Chinese, despite being Chinese, as a heritage learner, I'm told I have the handwriting of a child. So I thought I'd give it a try and see if the right character popped up, and it did. But what it comes down to is this. There are a lot of keyboards that people are using, and our students, particularly, ESL students that might not necessarily communicate in English with many people, they might have their keyboards in this setting apart from English. And so what you end up with is a situation where you're trying to just do something really basic, like get onto the internet. And, if anyone wants to try this one out, how do you instruct someone to type the percentage sign? Let's say in the, password, there's a little percentage sign, for it to be secure. So, once we have, like Joanna had said, my students don't usually have their keyboard set to English. So even just that, having to download that particular setting and turn it on, that's the first step, right? Once you get to this step, then, how do you get there? So, looking at my phone, I can tell you, and I've written this down already, you click on C, which is the 1, 2, 3 button, which then changes the letter A, where that button is, to number sign plus equal sign. And then on the top row is percentage. So imagine trying to train someone to do that while you're online, while you're doing a Zoom meeting. It's near impossible. And so, part of what Digital ESL does is it is paper-based first, and it is in person to allow for the actual practice to do this. So because it's so hard to explain and not worth memorizing the exact location of everything, the actual practice of going through this, like anyone on this call is probably like, oh yeah, I could probably find it if you asked me to, but I might be punching around a little bit. And that's totally fine, because at least you know the path to get there. And that's kind of the same thing we want to be able to do with our students, is to give them the comfortability to poke around until they find the thing that they need, instead of be absolutely lost. Because there are a lot of buttons, and these are foreign keyboards for our students. So the statement here is really achieving digital literacy requires building basic skills. And, with the advent of AI and a lot of, discussion about how it could help our learners, it's really great that we are advancing technology. But while that's also happening, we may be leaving others behind. And that's really an issue of equity that I think is addressable. And that's what we're trying to do here. And exactly, digital resilience, super important to build those basic skills that then allow you to be able to build the confidence to be able to then face challenges and evolutions in technology. So this you might be very familiar with, but anyone that has used North Star, I did not get the paid version. So what you see here is a free version snapshot of the basic computer skills assessment. If you take a look at it, you'll notice there's a lot of different features that are on here, and it's wonderful that it's available as a free evaluation. However, if you go through it, it does have a couple caveats here. So it does require a good amount of understanding of English, at least an intermediate level of English, some basic digital navigation abilities. Imagine this in another language. And if you even know that these are buttons, which one do you press on? Troubleshooting abilities, directly in here, they're asking you, do you hear the music? And, even if you are in a center with a teacher, which is most likely how this is being implemented, and even if you have easy access to a computer or laptop, and even if you have internet access, having all these questions here really makes it seem more complicated than it has to be. And really can be demoralizing to students because they're not able to navigate through just the first page without help. So the idea here is, how do we assess and how do we train people to build that confidence from day one, rather than try to fit them into existing materials that exist. So as Harris in 2015 had mentioned, digital literacy and language literacy are intertwined. So a lot of the wording that we use specifically when navigating is something that is learned as language. Some of it's borrowed from just standard conversational English, and some of it, like the word swipe, has completely new meanings when we're talking about digital literacy. But there's no doubt about it that in order to achieve digital literacy, you need to be able to read English for English digital literacy. So Digital ESL, this open educational resource that I created, is specifically created for beginner level English learners. Rather than having to own or have access to a laptop or a desktop computer, the idea is to be able to leverage the learner's smartphone so that they have continuous practice because it's their own device. They have familiarity, general familiarity with it, and it allows them to be able to use something that is immediately relevant for their own lives. The other portion here is really regarding, because it's on a smartphone, you do have the ability to use the internet or cell service. Obviously, cell service isn't the preferred method for, high volume, high traffic kind of information going back and forth, but at the very least, you do have kind of like a backup. So some of you might be asking, why would we teach this on smartphones? I gave you a couple of reasons earlier, but it really is about making use of, materials that we have, making use of those devices, allowing them to be able to get the practice, developing confidence, which then also promotes a willingness to experiment, which, as we were talking about digital resilience, experimentation and learning and working past kind of issues, that's all part of that resilience building. And at the end of the day, it really does improve that relevance of that technology. I can't tell you how many times I work with students that we're handing them a Chromebook and we're like, hey, aren't you so happy you have a Chromebook? We wouldn't necessarily say those exact words, but it's borrowed a lot of times. And they're like, well, this is fine, but this isn't like my Chromebook, or this isn't something that I would use naturally. But, we spend a lot of time on our smartphones. We're not the only ones. And as you see here, because this material was actually originally created for older adult English language learners, the rate of ownership for smartphones has increased quite significantly from even a little over 10 years ago. And now we're at about 76% saturation, according to the Pew Research Center. So just a couple things here. These are snapshots and little excerpts from Digital ESL. So Unit 1, as you see here, integrates some informal assessment of both the English language and familiar with technology. So as we were going through the actual keyboard layout, imagine printing this out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, walking around the class and seeing, how quickly can someone identify where the letters are? It's almost like a word search, but it's a letter search. So the faster someone is able to find the letters, it can be a proxy for how familiar they are using, US English keyboard. And then in terms of the English language, identifying apps, I think many people, if not, let's say, the class that I taught here, every single person used YouTube and almost on a daily basis. None of them used WhatsApp. Some people have heard of Facebook, but didn't really use it, and none of them used Zoom. Many of them also didn't have email, so it's not surprising that they weren't so familiar with that. But it's really interesting as you go through this, you understand what the students understand about the technology and what they are able to articulate. So then Unit 2, we build in teaching language and skills, so guiding learners how to connect to Wi-Fi. So there are some additional, paper-first visuals that allow students to get familiar with what information is actually on the smartphone, to be able to then tie it back to contextual information that they may be able to recall. So regarding battery level, we were joking about the cell service speed because I said 5G and most of them laughed. They said 3G. I said 5G fast, 3G is what we have. So things like that, like you'd be surprised what students know. The average age of my students was 82. So even with that, I think being able to just give people the opportunity to demonstrate that they know what's going on, they want to learn more, is already very huge. And then so the other part of Unit 2 that we have here as a snapshot is the actual action. So each one of these that you see here also has a full page digital asset that you can just print out. It's just it's a visual aid that just has the image and it says swipe up, so you can use that during class. And through this is also very much guided by the portion of experimentation. So as you're working through this, using the exaggerated movements and then actually using your phone, you can kind of show people what it is that you're talking about. And most likely they already have a sense for what the action does. They just might not necessarily have the words in English to associate it to that action. So as you're building up their digital literacy vocabulary, this allows them to be able to then unlock a whole bunch of other stuff because now they're able to understand what you're saying when you're explaining certain actions. And then I'll hop over to Unit 5 and Unit 8, just as little examples here. But the idea is really to be able to empower students, not just to receive help, but to provide help. So the idea is, in providing the language and the experience in changing settings, so making font larger, or the screen larger, or making it louder, quieter, brighter, or helping somebody find a certain button. Those are all things that as teachers, we obviously want to help people with, but the idea here is to be able to build community within the actual student group to be able to have them actually ask and answer those questions amongst themselves to be able to help them not only practice English, but also empower them to show that they not only know how to do the action, but they also know how to help others. So, embedding English into this whole practice, practicing speaking and having the comparative words here to allow them to be able to see it kind of in context with what they're actually doing on the smartphones. And then skipping over to Unit 8, everything builds on prior units, particularly for Unit 8. This is where, we start getting into real world relevance in a way that could really be life-changing. So as an example, at the end of the entire course, students are able to get onto password-protected Wi-Fi on their own, scan a QR code, and fill out an online form. So as I've mentioned before, it's paper-based. The digital ESL is paper-based to start with. So what Unit 8 does, it allows them just initial practice on scanning a QR code, but the actual filling out of the form is all done on the paper first, and it's only until you get to Unit 9 that you're actually then going online and using the information that you fill out. So it's kind of like pre-filling out the information so you can actually talk about the content and explain what's going on there first. Before having to layer on the extra part of using digital tools. So this was a suggestion that was made that I think is incredible because the idea is for digital ESL to be taught by both specialists and non-specialists alike. Handing this material to an ESL teacher, no problem. I think they absolutely know what to do. We absolutely know what to do with this information. But if you hand it over to somebody that's a community member that just wants to help, they might be like, I don't understand how I can take these 5 or 6 pages and turn it into an hour, right? And so what these one-page lesson plans do is it gives very specific recommendations for how to be able to divide up the time, what type of interactions might be helpful, and just, constant encouragement to be able to make sure that the person that's teaching and facilitating is approaching the class with a growth mindset and also with the patience necessary, both for themselves and for the students. So here I just have a screenshot of the digital ESL lesson plan, notes for all units, and then a snapshot of Unit 6. as you'll see, how this works is that even the repetition portion and how you would repeat spelling something out and then saying the whole word is all here, so that hopefully it should be fairly easy to administer to people that are non-specialists that are interested in helping. When I did this, I did it through the Hayward Public Library. But I was also getting my master's in TESOL, so it was not difficult for me to think up of like how to be able to interact with the class. But I do know that there's other people that are in the community that are interested in teaching this, but they are just a little bit like, they're looking for a little bit more structure. So that's what this is meant to do, is to help out with that. And so you'll see kind of like dimly in the background, there are over 65 principal visual aids. And those are all in support of the actual curriculum that's in here. The idea is you could, I don't know if you could see this really well. Let me, I basically have a laminated sheet here. It's one of the pocket folders, but I put the visual aids in here for whatever week that I'm teaching. And I might have some previous weeks in here, but the idea is to be able to bring these into class so that you have something a little bit larger that you can share with people. And there are a few different ways to teach this. You know, as I kind of just went through really quickly, you can teach it as is, you know, as a standalone program for older adult English language learners. I know the time might seem like a very long time, like a 1 hour for each unit to teach the material. But the idea is to be able to give them adequate practice time and not to rush. The feedback that I got was it was really good pace. It was just a little bit challenging, but not so much that it felt like insurmountable. So you can teach it as is. You can integrate it into your ESL classes. You know, take little bits and pieces, whatever makes sense for your classroom. Or if you're just like, you know what, I'm all set on that, but the visual aids might be helpful, you could just use the visual aids. So there's no requirement to use it in any particular type of way. The idea is really just to be able to have some ready-to-made materials available for people to use. All right, so let's see how we're doing on time. So I do the welcome and warm up, digital ESL and excerpts. Awesome, we're running on time. So now this is the fun part. I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment. I'm gonna send a link over to you via the Zoom chat. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the actual site that has the Digital ESL OER, Open Educational Resource. I have a bit.ly for it. It's all caps, DESL-OER. So it would start bit.ly/DES capital DESL-OER. And that's in the chat right now. So if you can all click on that link, what you'll end up seeing is, I'm going to open up a different window so you can see what it looks like as a non-owner. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. You'll see that it brings you to OER Commons. So if this is something that you have an account to, you can save it, like it, comment, things like that. But if you're just looking to be able to get the actual material, this is where I'm kind of like centrally housing everything, and it's all linked. So as soon as something gets updated, the information will be updated here. You can click on view resource either by clicking on here in that little square icon, or click on view resource. And what it'll do is, if you're in Chrome and your settings are as such, you'll see that it opens up in a new tab, and it is all in Google Slides. So the directions that I'm actually going to be going through, because we are all personalizing our own copy here today, is in the actual material. It is on page 5. But rather than have you have to all read it, what you could do is I can read it out loud if you want to follow the directions. So we've already gone to the link to get to this page. You'll see that right now it's a view only version in Google Slides. You have 2 options here. I'm going to run through both options. The first one is to maintain everything in Google Slides. If you're a Google Slides person and you like having everything web-based like this, will follow me in this first set of steps. If you prefer PowerPoint, it's also editable in PowerPoint as a download. So just take a pause and you can see what we're doing with Google Slides. If you're more interested in PowerPoint, we'll get to that right next. Okay, so no need for anyone to look at the Zoom screen right now. I'd like you to focus on the actual Digital ESL Google Slides document, and I'll just walk you through this step to be able to make a copy for yourself. So in the top menu bar of the website, you'll see it says File, Edit, View, Help. I want you to click on File. Then there's a drop down where you'll be able to see it says Make a Copy. And then from there, entire presentation is what you want to click over to. So once you get there, a copy document window will appear. It's a little pop-up. And this is where you can rename it. So don't worry about anything. You're not making any edits to mine. You're literally just making a copy for yourself. So I'm going to rename mine TC Jan 25th copy. And you don't need to keep any of the other words as well. You can rename it to anything else that you want. So I can even say Jan 25 June. It's June, not Jan. Digital ESL training example. And then you can pick a folder. I usually just leave that as is. And then I'll click on the button that says make a copy. So what you'll notice is that when you do that, it'll open up a new tab. It might take a couple seconds, but now on that top left-hand corner, you'll see that the name of the file is whatever you renamed it. And anything that you do here is all locally yours. So let's put a pin in it for now. I'm gonna go back and go through the directions for people that want to download it as a PowerPoint, and then we can go through from there. So maybe if there's if people can maybe do a show of hands, this will be a good guess here. Who uses Google Slides, or who prefers Google Slides? And you can use your actual hand, or you can use your digital hand. Okay, we have a few. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, not too bad. And then how about PowerPoint? Looks like some both PowerPoint. I use both. I think I've started to use Google Slides more. But either way, you can go either way with this. So I'm going to hop back. I'm going to close this. I'm going to move to the other tab. And for those that like using PowerPoint, let's go through this. So to edit this in PowerPoint, you'll need to download it first. So again, the same thing that we're doing before for the Google Slides, folks. For anyone that's looking to be able to get a copy in PowerPoint, please go into the File menu, Download, which is a little different than the other step, and then Microsoft PowerPoint, which is the first selection. So just like before, a Save As window will pop up, and then you can rename the file in that Save As box. And actually, if yours just did what mine did, I might have to update the directions here. It went directly into my downloads file. So as you see over here in the top right corner for downloads, I'm going to open up this download, and you'll see that this was a PowerPoint file that just got downloaded, saved to my Mac. So I might need to update those directions, and feel free to point out anything as you're using it. If you're like, oh, hey, something worked a little bit differently than what was originally stated, feel free to let me know. This is a one-person show currently, but I'd love to be able to build out a network of others that are also interested in kind of building this out. I know I said it's a one-person show. That's just for the editing part. There's a whole community of people that have definitely helped provide feedback. So that is definitely the case. All right, I'm going to minimize these. And then I'm going to go back to the actual web-based version. Was everybody able to get in? I don't know, Amber, if you have your hand up from earlier or if you have a question. Okay, cool.
My apologies. My hand was just up from earlier.
Oh, yeah,
Thank
no
you, though.
worries. And then Jackie, it looks like you said encountered an error.
First time I tried to rename it, it went into the error, and then I went back. I just saved it as is and no error. So
Oh, okay, wonderful. If it pops up again, let me know. But now you've got a copy, it's all yours. So let's jump right in here. So the first thing that we're gonna do, and I'm gonna go into my copy here. Now that we have gone in and shown how to download it, is we're gonna edit the text and the images on page 10. So if I can ask everyone to go to page 10. And the direction should be fairly similar for those on PowerPoint as well, in terms of moving stuff around. So right here, you see it's got my name, but if you want to go in there and put your name in there, or whoever would be teaching the class, you can do that as well. So I'm going to pretend I'm making this for Jackie. So I clicked right into where the text box is, and I deleted out my name. And now I'm writing out Jackie's name with spaces in between, just for easier visual separation of the letters. So then the second thing that I'll want to do here is I want to make sure that the circles that were circling the letters that were in my name are now circling the letters that are in Jackie's name. So what I'll probably do is I'll move everything to the side, so you can click on each one of these circles. These are all, I believe they're JPEGs, so they're little image files that are on top. And now I can just make sure that I move it over to J, click and drag over to A, C, K, oops. And then I've got two more. So I'm actually going to Command C, I have a Mac, Command C, Command V, which is the copy paste, or you can right click, copy, right click, paste to make another one. I and then E. There's very few things in this that you will need to customize. This is one of them that might be nice to customize just because you'll be starting out the class with this. The rest of the stuff is all customizable, but this is one of those that I think might feel more relevant if you didn't have just a random person's name in there in the beginning. All right, does anybody have any questions about editing, moving around text in the actual file?
no, this was fun.
Okay, good. My hope is that you see how simple it is to be able to make changes to it if you wish to, so that you don't feel hesitant about going in there later. So that's awesome. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go down to slide 63. Oh yeah, that's a great question. Let me address that right now. Okay. So Nell had asked, after we make our edits, would we print this out and hand out as a paper document for our learners? Absolutely. So the way that this works is there are 10 units that go through different content. And the way that I had that ended up teaching it was 1 unit per week. And what I would do is print out each week in advance. So it would be slides 8 through 12 for week 1, times as many students as you have. Printable, it was this exact OER was formatted for 8.5 by 11 copy paper. It does not need to be in color. It can be in black and white. And so the idea is exactly that. Just print it out, and you'll have it for your class. And we actually do have that also. Thank you for bringing that up, because you're probably like, hey, you jumped right into it, but you didn't explain how to use it. The lesson plans, which are also linked in here, but I can chat them as well. Let's see here. I'll open them up here. Also in a bit.ly, Digital ESL lesson plans. What you'll see here is, let me zoom in. That we've got like links to the teaching material, what you'll need, folding name cards like I have here. This is also, we'll go through that and you can see it. How many visual aids? I would recommend just printing out 1 set for the entire course, worksheets for each unit. And if you go into the actual week, so let's say we're in unit 1, we've got the objectives and the student learning objectives, but then pre-class prep, I would recommend printing out the folding name cards, and then also, like it was mentioned in the notes for all units, printing out your units material as well. All right. So going back to, did that answer your question? No?
Yes, thank you so much. I think it just came up to me because I saw that blue parenthesis in the second image on that page where
Yeah.
the learner would put their name. And I just wasn't sure if they'd be typing that in because I know we were using phones. So that's where
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, the idea behind Digital ESL is that it would be an in-person paper-based class. So although the material is in such a large format that it would actually be pretty easy to read on a smartphone, all of these materials should be printed for the users to be able to get that hands-on practice first without also having to fumble through the technology. So, so that was a great observation. This My Name Is, with the brackets, is exactly that. It's for students to be able to actually write their name in and then find the letters on the keyboard. Awesome. All right, so now that we have edited the text and images on page 10, let's go down to slide 63. Oops. And you'll see all the visual aids there. So you don't have to teach these explicitly. These are just to help if you want to use them. So don't worry about that being additional content that you need to do anything with if you don't want to. Create a copy of the digital, here we go. So prior to Unit 8, there's directions on making a copy for the Digital ESL practice form. So as I had gone over during the actual review of the material, there are 2 units that support the students' learning of linking to a form through a QR code and then actually filling out information on that form. So rather than having everybody go to my form, I thought it might be probably a little bit more helpful if I had created something that allowed other people to be able to make a copy, start from it, and then make edits if necessary to make it more relevant for your students. So in the meeting chat, I have linked the bit.ly that's related to the form, which is also here on page 63. I'll type it in here. What it'll do is it'll say copy document, and you'll say, yes, make a copy. And so this is Google Forms. When you want to edit Google Forms, you can change the name here. So I might say training copy, and you can call it something else. The idea here is to be able to allow students a safe environment for them to submit information. And if any of you have particular information that you're needing from students that you would like to revise this or make changes, you can always like add question types and things like that, and Google kind of like how to edit or change things in a form. But the idea here is to have students provide their information and what they would see as the form in Unit 9, but in Unit 8, you'll actually give them the QR code that will be related to this. So this training copy that I have here allows you to be able to make edits to the attributes that you're looking for. So I have examples of street address and city. I have a drop down type for state, because again, this is just for practice. We ended up using a different form that we created with the Hayward Public Library, because they were manually receiving all the information in written form, writing the students' answers down as they were verbally giving it to them and translating it, and then typing it into the system. So we actually integrated that into the training. And I'd highly recommend, if there's anything like that where your students are needing to fill out something online, and if it's doable, to kind of replicate that or use a form to do that, so that they can do something like a meaningful exercise that'll also help you and your staff. So after creating this form, you have a copy of it. You can create a link one of many different ways. I know that I had actually referenced Bitly here. I love using Bitly. But the faster way, just for sake of time, that we can do here is you can actually just go into Google Chrome, assuming you're doing Chrome, and then in this little ... in your browser, you go to Save and Share, and you go down to Create QR Code. So this QR code can also be used, and you can download it as a file to then print out or copy and paste into your actual material to show the student to then take a snapshot of. So then what you do from there, when the students are actually using the form to fill information out for Unit 9, you can go in and you can actually take a look at the responses. So what I'm showing you here is in that training copy for the responses, there's a area where it says link to sheets. And it allows you to create a new worksheet, which will basically have a table format of all the information. So you can actually see if the students filled out the information correctly. So for example, one of my students had written, "My name is," in the first name. She'd actually written "My name is," and then she put her first name there as well. There are several people that had, figured out that their address had a unit number, but then it also had a street number, but they had kind of smushed it all in the beginning. So things like this, you can actually just see all in a column together to identify, okay, what areas do I need to be more explicit about teaching? And this just allows you, that centralized access post Unit 9, where you're actually having them go into the actual QR code and the online form to then fill out their information and submit. And it's all local. So whatever you send to them and you collect, that is all only viewable to you as the person that created it. So I won't be able to see it because you made a copy. All right, let's see here. So making a copy of the digital ESL practice form we just did. And then personalize the certificate of completion. So if I can have everybody go back to the actual slides and then go to page 65 or slide 65. This is something else that you can edit. So what I would recommend is you make a copy. So if I have, let's say I just have 10 students, I might go copy, right? And then paste. or I might just use my keyboard shortcut Command C, Command V, and make a bunch of copies. So what that allows me to do is just go one by one and edit the names. Etc. So this, you can also edit the location where the training was held, and if there was any team or group that you had done it in collaboration with. You can edit the name of the instructor and the date to be something else if you wish, or you can just print it out as is, one full page per person, and then sign it, like manually sign it with your hand, or you can PDF it if you wish. But I really like the handwritten signature because at the end, what I'd recommend is having each of your students in a group photo, if they're comfortable with it, pose with the certificate along with whoever taught it. And we do have a LinkedIn for Digital ESL if you wanted to post it to that page, just to be able to show that you were able to use it. That would be great, but you don't need to. None of it's required. But these certificate of completions are a great way to recognize the efforts of students that have continually made progress, returned to the class. You know, this is not a credit course. This is more, meant for enrichment and making sure that we have, digital inclusion in our communities. So the way that I ended up doing it was anyone that attended, I believe, like 5 or more of the 10 classes was able to receive one of these certificate of completions. I think that's all I've got here. You know, there's a lot of material in here. There's ways to be able to kind of go back and reference. I just want to show you that it is here so that you know that you can go back to it. This material is Creative Commons attribution of non-commercial share alike. Basically, all that means is just don't sell it, please. You can use it, you can change it. Just let people know, like if you wanted to make a copy and change it and republish it, feel free, but just reference back to the fact that it existed as this originally published in 2024, etc. But there's no need to check in with me or anything like that. The idea is to make this accessible and reach as many audiences as possible. I do just ask that nobody tries to turn this into a paid class where you're making like massive amounts of income off of it or anything like that, because this is really meant to be able to help communities around the country and maybe even around the world. I have a letter to the teacher here, or whoever will be teaching it. And then on page 4, there's a how to use, which links to the lesson plan outlines that I had just gone over with you and tells you that, there's also worksheet printouts, visual aids, folding name cards, certificate of completion, some recommendations I have in terms of, how to be able to really engage with your students, recommended class size, tools, class dynamic. Again, this is something that hopefully can also help people that don't have formal training being an ESL teacher, thus the additional detail that you see in class dynamics. And then what we had gone over here was how to be able to edit and remix. We just did the edit part in terms of downloading and editing. But additionally, if you wanted to make your own, but still kind of follow the general style and the look and the feel of it, I do have recommendations on font sizes and things like that. I specifically chose Open Sans because it is easier to read than the serif fonts. And on some of the pages, you'll notice that I had to go a little bit smaller, but generally these are the guidelines that I follow on here. Let's see here. I think I have a couple chats here. Linking spreadsheets, awesome. Yes, so Joanna has, she's creating a workbook for teaching, wants to know if she can edit the copy and make changes as relevant, absolutely, please do that. I would be honored if you use it as you wish. I believe that, you know, the way that we can make this the most impactful is if we personalize it. So if there's something that makes sense for your particular class or your needs, please go ahead and make those changes. And please, there's nothing sacred about this. I just wanted to create a template that had information in it that people can start off with, because it is just so hard to build it from scratch. And if we can just take one of those pieces out and make it easier for people, I really think that we can make a lot of progress in reaching as many people as possible. Last but not least, page 157 I have here. I have all the attribution for the images and icon credits. I made a lot of these from combinations of shapes and things from Noun Project. But what I would say here is, you know, if you are going to create your own images and icons, again, you don't need to check in with me or anything, or if you want to edit a particular icon, again, you don't need to check in with me. Feel free to run with it. But for the student's sake, be consistent. Be consistent in what you use in terms of icons and what they represent. When you create any kind of new imagery or icons, just maybe take a look and see what's available first to see if maybe you can reutilize any of it. So for example, if you've got a smartphone icon, don't have like 4 different smartphone icons depending on the context. As much consistency as you can make the imagery, the easier it'll be for students to be able to just focus on the learning. I've also got some image and icon resources here. Like I said, I primarily use Noun Project, but then I also spruce some of these things up with Google Slides in terms of drawing shapes and things like that. Company logos, you know, we're not making any money off of this, but companies still want to make sure that their logos look right if they do stumble upon them. If you look up a company's name and the word brand kit, I come from the business world, thus these words make sense to me, but basically anytime there's marketing and it's a larger company, they usually have a brand kit so that the colors that you use and the shapes that you use and all this other stuff are correct. The only thing that you'll get from this is probably just the logo. So when I was getting like the cell phone providers, for example, I went to the brand kits for like Verizon and Sprint, etc. Last but not least here, I do have a LinkedIn Digital ESL group. I would love for all of you to join. The idea there is that we would be able to share good practices of what we were able to do with the material, and then also to be able to, you know, ask questions like, you know, how do you do this? Or why is this like this? Or if there's any bugs or anything like that, feel free to, you know, shout that out and we'll fix it or we'll make updates. I want to be able to build that community so that we can all be there alongside one another to evolve this. And we have about 5 minutes left. So still running on time, which I'm very excited about. I know that we went through and made the edits to the files. Everybody should have a personalized file now with their own little flourishes and feel comfortable in making additional edits. Does anybody have any questions or comments, or what are your thoughts? Feel free to go off mute and.
Yeah, hi there. This is Pam. I work for Humboldt Literacy Project, and we have ESL learners and also you know, basic literacy. And I think I could combine both of those groups and create a class that isn't digital ESL, right? We could just recruit all of them because it's not specific to ESL. Correct?
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually that's how I started when I had called up the Hayward Public Library. They have a digital literacy team, probably digital navigators too, maybe specifically. And then they also have an English language literacy. But I was like, do you have anything that's like a combination of the two? And they're like, no, but do you want to talk? I was like, absolutely. So yeah, Pam, that would be amazing. Yeah, I love that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Nell, I see you have your hand up.
I have two things. So one is this is amazing, not only in the resource itself, but also I think in the way that you structured today. Because I think I said in the chat, like I struggle with this all the time with the hands-on while you're doing Zoom. So that was amazing. One question I have, I know you had sort of a specific set of objectives. Do you have an assessment at the end, or I haven't looked through the materials, maybe it's included, but do you have a way of kind of affirming that people got what you wanted them to get, or how do you handle that piece?
Gosh, that's a really great question. I feel like the assessment that I have is very informal. And that the end of the day, the assessment that I have is really, can they fill out the information on the through the QR code on the form correctly? So there's like minor things that we have taught throughout the time that maybe I wouldn't know. We haven't asked them to go back onto Wi-Fi, password protected Wi-Fi again. Like it's usually they aren't on it and then let's get on it. So what I do tend to do is not touch their phones at all. Like, and also ask that none of their peers touch their phones. Like the only person that can touch their phone is them, and they need to go through the exact actions. They can write their notes, they can doodle, whatever necessary to be able to learn it. But I don't have a really great, like, all-encompassing assessment at the end. It's really just like, did they fill out the form correctly? Were they able to get online and do the drop downs and things like that, which are actually very new concepts for most of them. So like the little triangle for the drop down, they're like, what? Like, no, I didn't know how to get there.
And I think that's a great model for an assessment for digital skills, is the actual act of doing the thing. So I didn't necessarily need anything other than that, but this is always the question. So question one always is, well, I can't do this because my students are low level ESL. And it's like, well, actually, I think you can do a lot of this. And then this piece of assessment, because we are, I think with the Digital Equity Fund and all this stuff, we're going to have these situations where funders are going to want some sort of assessment. And I really like this model of the practical, you filled out the form. So that demonstrates that you could do all the things you need to do to get there. So that's great.
And the thing is, you're not going to help them with it. Like in the assessment part, you're not going to throughout the training, you can guide them, but the actual doing, you're like, I'm not taking this test for the person. So the doing is the proof. So yeah, I like that. And if there are any other suggestions on how we can make it more like legitimate for locations that might require something more robust, let me know, because I would love to be able to partner with any one of you or any one of you that know other people to be able to make something that might warrant or get funding, things like that could help you kind of like reach more people. That's definitely not a specialty of mine. So I would love to be able to find more folks that have that specialty, that have that knowledge. But yeah, mine is very much like, if you did it, then you know it. So a little bit simplified, but does the trick for the first time. Yes, Pam?
Yeah, I thought I just heard you say they're not going to use their phones. But aren't you doing it paper and then they practice on their phones?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
So let me clarify. There's two parts to it. You're right, it's paper-based first. So everything that you print out, they're working on the paper first. And it could be like actual huge imagery of the phone and what's on there. Even like the form information. A lot of it is like a screenshot of the actual form information so they can get a sense for like what it might look like once they get there. So the one part is, yes, it is paper-based first. So for example, that Unit 8, Unit 9, Unit 8 is figure out the content. And then Unit 9 is actually scan the QR code and use the online form to fill it out on your own phone. So that's one. So you heard correctly. The second piece is, do not allow other students or the teacher or yourself feel compelled to press any buttons on the student's phone. So do not use the student's phone. Allow them to have that experimentation, to have that comfortability. If they need to wear glasses to be able to see it, please encourage them to do that. Because I did not follow my own directions yesterday in a separate class where somebody was trying to log in. They're like, oh, I don't have my glasses. So I was short on time. And of course, I typed in their username and password, when what I would have done if this were digital ESL and I were following my own directions, is to be like, hey, I've got all day. Like please type in your username and password yourself, right? Because it's really empowering. And I think, we really need to instill that confidence that people can do it. And that they can also show others to do it. But do not allow like one, not caretaker, but there's always like pairs of people that are like answering for the other person. Like, don't allow that, because the learning's not going to happen, right? And so when I said don't use the phone, don't use somebody else's phone. Like if you're going to demonstrate, you can demonstrate on your own phone, but have them actually do the work and struggle through and learn through and experiment to be able to get through that point that is necessary to build a digital resilience, because it starts from like the smallest things.
What about casting your phone to a screen?
That's a good idea. Actually, I prefer this. Sorry, you can't see this, so let me unblur. I think most of you know what this is. It's a document cam. So what the document cam does, and then I actually also have a anti-glare screen, is like I'll just show my actual cell phone. The reason I do this, I think this is like a lot because so my dad has dementia, and context is really important, right, for people with dementia, and the same thing for our students. So like if you just cast to a screen, it doesn't quite make that much sense for some people, because like they're just looking at the screen. But if you actually show the phone as it exists, it can be a lot more helpful than like casting, because it kind of loses its contextual clues. So I would recommend getting, if you don't already have like a document cam, and then just showing the actual phone, so that you can also, if you wanted to, walk to the students personally and show them one by one, if it helps kind of that way.
Well, I used to teach how to use a smartphone just to the general public, and I was able to stream it to the projector, and everything that I did on my phone would show up, so you could see the phone. So,
Gotcha. Hey,
yeah.
you are all the experts here. So the comfortability level of your students, you can gauge the room. I'm just, in my head, I'm like planning for the most basic, and then hopefully including more people that way. But if you're like, hey, I know my students and they don't need that level of hand holding, don't worry about it. Like go with your gut, go with what you need to do. And if you already have the tools and resources and confidence, go with that. I totally trust you. Now I know we're about 5 minutes over. Does anybody have anything else, or ooh, what's digital ABE? Oh, for like adult basic education? Nice. Yeah, it started out with ESL just because we have that it's digital literacy and language literacy are so intertwined. And so we really had such a double, I don't know if you want to call it a double jeopardy in a bad way, but like it's really tough. You are trying to learn the language, you're trying to learn the tools, and with both you can learn so much more. There's like all these apps online, you got Duolingo, you can get onto Zoom eventually, but like without them you're like, wow, very lost. So like this definitely was built for the ESL community, but can be used for anyone. It's not really just meant for older adults. It's not just meant for ESL learners. It's meant for anyone. And so feel free to adapt it to whatever classroom you feel that it's fit for, because your students best.
Thank you, Talley. You've gotten a lot of a star review going on in the chat, and people would like to know if they can get in contact with you.
Absolutely.
They can reach out to you. And thank you all very much for attending today and being a part of, looking at innovative ways to bridge the digital divide, and looking at how we can be innovative, creative, and work with wonderful people like Talley, who are, making impact and strides in this area, and working together for the betterment of our learners. So thank you all again. A recording of this will be made available on our MOLE, Mayor's Office of Adult Literacy YouTube. And if you will, Banke shared the link. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can get the announcements for future trainings, links for the recordings, and we can keep you in the loop as we continue to develop more trainings like this with our partners across the nation. So thank you again. Appreciate you all very much.
And I highly, highly recommend following the Mayor's Office of Adult Literacy on LinkedIn and signing up for the newsletters, because it is two separate levels of content. There's a lot of like general information that's relevant for people around the country, grants information, education information, professional development information. It's never a dull day in the best way. So I highly, highly recommend signing up for both the newsletter as well as following them on LinkedIn.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Have a great day. Thank you, Tally.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.